So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts, in which we cover a particular day's current affairs in a very short span of time within 30 minutes. Now please do not forget to revise this lecture as well. You have followed this routine of watching the lecture, but watching this lecture is job half done. Because just after watching this lecture, you need to revise it as well. Because revision helps in consolidating these current affairs in your memory. Otherwise, you'll quickly forget them. And you can revise these current affairs from the notes provided by us, and these notes are shared on our Telegram channel. The Telegram channel's link is provided in the comment section below. Now I know in yesterday's lecture I told you that the current affairs lecture shall be uploaded morning every day. Well, it will be uploaded in the morning every day from tomorrow onwards or day after tomorrow onwards. It will take a couple of days. Basically, we need to shift our routine, our institute's routine, so that these current affairs lectures are prepared well in advance. They are prepared, they contain every important information that you require, and then they are uploaded in the morning. Okay, so we need to change the routine. We need to change certain things, right? That is why it is taking a couple of days, but after a couple of days time, this lecture shall be uploaded in the morning. So people who want to watch this lecture in the morning, who have a morning routine, well, they can watch it in the morning. Who have an evening routine, well, they can wait for the evening and watch this lecture at that time. The lecture is going to stay there. Okay, but this is very important. You should have a routine. Whether it's morning or evening, you should have a routine. Clear? Alright then. Let's begin today's session. But first, let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover today. This is very important. Okay, so daily current affairs, 2nd July 2025, and well, here are the topics. Okay. So topic number 1 is employment linked incentive scheme. This scheme has been launched to boost employment in the country. Okay, we'll talk about this. Then it was found out that the monsoon this time around arrived a little early. So monsoon's early national coverage. Why did monsoon arrive early and covered the entire country? Generally, monsoon covers the entire country by July 8th. That's the normal time. But this time around, monsoon basically swept the entire country by June 29th. So it was well advanced. So there are some geographical factors behind this issue, behind this event, anomaly, if you can call it. So what are those factors? We'll try to understand that. Okay, this will cover your geography portion also in a bit. Then there is this huge issue of Dalai Lama's succession. As we all know, Dalai Lama is the spiritual leader of all Tibetan Buddhists, right? He is in Dharamshala right now and he's leading, basically he's an important figure in the Tibetan government in exile. Now he is going to celebrate his 90th birthday on July 6th, and there are basically rumors and talks around his succession. Who would be the successor of Dalai Lama? Okay, so we'll talk about this issue and what role does China play in all of this. Clear? And in the end, we'll talk about Quad, a group of 4 countries in the Indo-Pacific, okay, Australia, Japan, India and USA. Well, their foreign ministers meeting happened in Washington DC, where our foreign minister S. Jaishankar said something important about Pahalgam terror attack and Operation Sindoor and all of that. But that is not important for us. What is important for us is to know what this Quad is. So we'll try to investigate what Quad is. Most of you know this already, but still there's no harm in knowing it about even one more time. Okay, so well, we'll talk about these 4 issues. These are the 4 issues that we shall zero in our attention on. Let's start discussing them one by one, starting with topic number 1, which is employment linked incentive scheme. Now look, India is a population surplus country. Okay, we are not a country which suffers from this problem of lack of people. Okay, we have surplus amount of people. Now, when a country has a huge population, the only way it can develop economically is by providing more jobs. Look, countries that have very low population numbers, well, for them, jobs is not that big of an issue. Okay, for them, economic development without job creation is a satisfactory response. Okay, it is considered satisfactory. But for a country which has labor surplus, for a labor surplus country like India, which has huge population numbers, well, along with economic development, you need to take care of creation of jobs. Job creation is very important for highly populated countries like India and China, right? So government of India has been focusing on job creation. Plus, job creation is also politically expedient. No government can ignore job creation. No political party can ignore job creation. Plus, if any political party creates a lot of jobs, well, it has a high chance of winning elections next time around. So it is also politically expedient, it is also economically expedient, it is also developmentally expedient. So everyone wins when more jobs are created. Political party wins, India wins, youth wins. Right? Therefore, job creation is an important political matter in all elections. Okay? You might be seeing this in the news. Well, Bihar elections are around the corner and the issue of job creation is basically quite dominant over there too. Job creation is a big issue everywhere, in all areas. Now, the problem is that the government at central level also wants to create jobs. Yes, but it knows that government cannot take up this issue entirely. Basically, what I mean by this is that you cannot solve the problem of job creation by increasing the number of government jobs. Okay, there are not enough government jobs. You need to create a lot of private jobs as well. There is a limited amount of government jobs available in the country. So you can't always conduct more recruitment exams and say we have solved the problem of job creation. No, because that is not enough. For India to absorb a lot of these unemployed youth, you need to create private jobs as well. And for that, in this year's budget, well, Government of India launched Prime Minister's package on employment and skilling. Okay, it was a 2 lakh crore package in which incentives will be provided to private sector to generate more jobs. Okay, so basically job creation is important and we all know that government cannot absorb all these unemployed youth because there is a limit to that. Therefore, in the budget, government announced Prime Minister's package for employment and skilling, and under that package they have launched a scheme that is called Employment Linked Incentive Scheme. Employment Linked Incentive Scheme. It is basically believed that if this scheme becomes successful, more than 3 crore jobs would be created in the next 2 years. Okay, so remember this part. To create more jobs, this package was launched by Prime Minister in the budget. And under this package, recently a scheme has been announced which is called Employment Linked Incentive Scheme. Now, to know more about this scheme, you need to understand what is the basic philosophy behind this scheme. Look, like I told you before, that government cannot generate all the jobs that are required in this country. Therefore, private sector needs to step up. But for private sector to step up, it needs to be incentivized. There should be an incentive for private companies to hire more and more people, right? Now that incentive is being provided by the government. And government has learnt this incentive scheme from its another scheme, which was Production Linked Incentive Scheme. Okay, government had launched PLI scheme. Under that PLI scheme, government said that all the companies, all the eligible companies who would increase their production levels, they would get some financial benefit from us. Okay, so in the greed for this financial benefit, all the companies, eligible companies, started increasing their production levels. They started producing more and more goods and services. India's GDP increased. Well, output increased, right? So learning from the success of Production Linked Incentive Scheme, government thought that we can generate a similar scheme for generating more jobs. This is known as Employment Linked Incentive Scheme. So under this scheme, if a private company, eligible private company, I should repeat that, if an eligible private company hires more people, it will get some financial benefits from the government. So if it hires more people for a job of 10,000 rupees per month, it will get 1,000 rupees from the government per worker, right? Incentives like these. You understand? So in the greed for these incentives, companies might hire more and more people. That is the idea. That is the idea behind Employment Linked Incentive Scheme. Okay? Your incentives from the government are linked to the number of jobs, employment you generate. You understand? Okay? And remember, this ELI scheme, Employment Linked Incentive Scheme, is part of Prime Minister's package for employment and skilling. Clear? Make sense? So let's discuss about this, okay? So employment linked incentive scheme. So this is the ELI scheme, okay? This is part of an announcement made in the budget, which was called Prime Minister's Package for Employment and Skilling. This was a 2 lakh crore package, okay? And under this package, government will launch multiple schemes. One scheme has been recently announced, and that is called Employment Linked Incentive Scheme, okay? This Employment Linked Incentive Scheme has a budget of 99,000 crores, around 99,000 crores, and this would go on for 2 years, mostly 2 years. Some components of this scheme would go on for 4 years as well, but mostly this scheme would go on for 2 years. And it is hoped that in these 2 years, because of these incentives, because of the scheme, if the scheme becomes successful, well, within these 2 years, 3.5 crore jobs would be created within private sector alone. These 3.5 crore jobs would be created in the next 2 years in private sector only. Okay, for government sector, government is conducting recruitment exams. That is a separate thing. These are 3.5 crore more jobs apart from the government sector. So this is a very good thing. Therefore, we should all pray that this scheme becomes successful. Now, the thing is that government has announced recently, Union Cabinet approved this scheme as part of this package. And with the approval, Union Cabinet also made an announcement. It said that this scheme will be composed of 2 parts. Okay, part A will be for first-time employees, people who are getting jobs for the first time, youth, and part B will be for others. Okay, plus under employment linked incentive scheme, government is trying to generate more jobs in the formal sector. You know, there are 2 types of jobs: formal jobs, informal jobs. Formal jobs involve, along with a monthly salary, you also get some social security benefits like pension, insurance, provident fund, all these things, right? So government wants that all workers in India should also get these social security benefits, right? And these social security benefits are given in formal jobs. Informal jobs are like daily wage laborers and all this. So government wants to generate these 3.5 crore jobs in the formal sector, right? And for this, part A and part B of the scheme is launched, are launched basically, okay? So let's discuss these 2 parts one by one. So part A, look, all private formal sector employees are generally registered with this organization called Employee Provident Fund Organization. If you are registered with this Employee Provident Fund Organization, then whenever you receive a salary, you have to contribute some component of your salary to this fund, so that when you retire, you will get this amount in lump sum. Okay, you are basically saving this amount from your salary, some portion of your salary in this provident fund. Make sense? Okay, this is, I mean, we can have a detailed discussion on EPFO, but I'm just confining this discussion to this point only. Just know this, okay? In our economics lectures, we will have a detailed discussion on EPFO. Don't worry, okay? Or some other time in some other current affairs. Nonetheless, this is an organization where all formal sector employees register and contribute some amount of their salary, okay, as a savings mechanism. Clear? Now, part A of this scheme is for first-time employees, okay? So, for first-time employees, government is providing incentive to these employees only, to these workers only. So, this is a scheme for first-time employees who are registered with EPFO. These people, these first-time employees will get 1 month of their EPS wage, the wage they have received, okay? 1 month of their Employee Provident Fund wage. But the upper limit to that is 15,000. So, if you want to register for part A, well, you register for part A of this scheme, register with EPFO, and then you will be eligible. If you're a first-time employee, you will be eligible for 1 month of your EPS salary. But there is an upper limit, that is 15,000. You won't get more than 15,000. But nonetheless, that's good, right? Now, employees with salaries up to rupees 1 lakh are eligible, not employees with more than 1 lakh of salary. Clear? Now, this would benefit 1.92 crore people and expand social security net. Of course, So this would not only generate 1.92 crore jobs for new people, it would also generate a habit of saving money in employee provident fund organization, because the mandatory requirement of getting this incentive is that you are registered with EPFO. Clear? Simple. Now let's talk about part B. Now part B of this scheme is an incentive to employers. So those companies who will hire more workers will get this benefit. Okay? Incentive for employers. Those who add new employees and retain them for at least 6 months will get this benefit. Clear? So incentives will be provided for up to 2 years, but if your company belongs to the manufacturing sector, these incentives will continue for 4 years. What are these incentives? Look, the thing is that if you employ people up to a salary of 10,000, you will get 1,000 from government. If from 10,000 to 20,000, you will get 2,000 from government. If from 20,000 to 1 lakh, you will get 3,000 from government per worker. Clear? And for being eligible for this scheme, if your company has less than 50 employees, then you become eligible if you hire more than 2 workers. If you have more than 50 employees, then you become eligible if you hire more than 4 workers. All these details are given in your notes. That's not important. Just go through these details, okay? But this is the thing. The idea is hire more workers, take money from us. Clear? And this scheme, this part B, well, government hopes that it will generate around 2.6 crore jobs. So this is good, right? This is the thing. Clear? And remember, job creation is the most important topic in Indian politics, in Indian economics, in Indian developmental economics, in India's society. Job creation is most important thing. Why? Because India is a labor surplus country. India is a population surplus country. Clear? And most of our people are youth. Okay, most of this population belong to that youth bracket, youth age bracket. Okay, all right. Now let's quickly shift our focus to second news item, and that is early onset of monsoon. And the thing is that monsoon has covered the entire country well in advance. Generally, the monsoon winds and the monsoon rains cover the entire country. They start with Kerala, okay, but they cover the entire country by July 8th, northern parts mostly. But this time around, they have covered the entire country by 29 June, okay, almost 10 days, 10 days in advance. Now, this time around, monsoon is also bringing a lot of rainfall also. So, monsoon is healthy, early onset has been seen. So, definitely there are some geographical factors behind this phenomena, okay. Now, Indian Meteorological Department has identified some of these geographical factors. So, let's talk about these geographical factors because questions might be asked from this topic as well. Clear? So, let's discuss it, okay. So, monsoon's early national coverage. Now, like I said before, well, the thing is that generally monsoon covers the entire country by July 8th, but this time around it has covered the entire country by June 29th. Okay, now what are the reasons behind this? Okay, well, Indian Meteorological Department has identified 4 or 5 reasons. First of all, there were low pressure systems in India. Now, low pressure system means that there is low wind pressure. Whenever there is low wind pressure in a particular area, well, there are areas where wind pressure is high, there are areas where wind pressure is low. Wind travels from high pressure to low pressure. So these low pressure areas act like magnets, okay? They catch wind from high pressure areas. So wind starts to blow from high pressure areas to these low pressure areas, right? Now, because these winds are monsoon winds, so they are bringing some moisture along with that. So they come to low pressure areas, form clouds and bring rainfall. Now, around 5 low pressure areas developed in India during the month of June, which sucked in monsoon winds from the Indian Ocean. And that is why there was this early onset of monsoon. Clear? So this is the reason, low pressure systems. Then there is another reason called monsoon trough position. We'll talk about this. Then there were 3 other reasons identified by Indian Meteorological Department. These 3 other reasons were Madden-Julian oscillation, it was an active phase, neutral conditions with respect to Indian Ocean dipole, and neutral conditions with respect to El Nino. You must have heard this. El Nino southern oscillation conditions. Clear? Now let's discuss these one by one. First, let's talk about Madden-Julian oscillation. Okay. So as you can see in this picture, this is Madden-Julian oscillation. So basically there is a circle, there is a cycle of winds. Let me change the color. Okay. So there is a cycle of winds. Okay. Wind blows in this cycle. Clear? There is a low pressure area. So when, just a second, let me redraw it. Okay, so wind blows in this circular fashion. Here, now the wind blows, let's suppose, towards the green side. There is low pressure, so it moves upwards. Okay, it forms clouds. Rainfall happens, then it moves eastwards, and then it descends in this high pressure area. Because it descends in this high pressure area, there are no clouds. So this region has clear skies. This region has cloudy weather. Now this entire cycle is known as Madden-Julian oscillation. Clear? Now this forms around the equator, oceanic Indian Ocean region around the equator. So there is no shortage of moisture. So when this wind is blowing, okay, it carries moisture from the Indian Ocean, rises upwards, drops that moisture, moves sideways, then drops again. Okay, this is the way this cycle moves. Clear? Now this is a Madden-Julian oscillation. Why oscillation? Because it is moving like this. Now, this Madden-Julian oscillation moves eastwards, okay, from, let's suppose, Africa to the Australia region of the equator, close to Australia, okay, it moves eastwards. Now, this region is known as the convective phase. This portion of Madden-Julian oscillation is known as the convective phase, okay. This portion is known as the, well, non-active phase. If India lies in this region when the monsoon is coming, and this upward motion portion, because this entire cycle is moving eastwards, right? So when monsoon is arriving in India and it gets struck by this green portion, well, it brings more rainfall and monsoon winds move towards the Indian subcontinent quicker. But if when monsoon is arriving and this eastward movement of Madden-Julian oscillation, well, monsoon strikes this downward motion portion, then there is lack of rainfall. This time around, monsoon struck this green portion. So we can say Madden-Julian oscillation along the Indian subcontinent or the Indian Ocean below that was in its active phase. You understand? Though you will understand this Madden-Julian oscillation in detail when we'll cover geography in our Gurukul course basically. Clear? So this is that. Then there is Indian Ocean dipole. As you can see in this picture, okay, Indian Ocean dipole is basically the difference between the temperature of Western Indian Ocean, Eastern Indian Ocean. Okay, if Western Indian Ocean is warmer than Eastern Indian Ocean, then that would make the air rise up on the Western Indian Ocean and the air would descend in the Eastern Indian Ocean. If Western is warmer than Eastern, this is known as positive Indian Ocean dipole. If Eastern's temperature is higher than Western, this is known as negative Indian Ocean dipole. And if it is not, I mean, there is not much difference, that is known as neutral. Now, as you can see, when Western Indian Ocean is warmer, well, it would lead to low pressure area close to India. That would lead to rise of winds, forming clouds and bringing rainfall. Clear? If it's the opposite, well, this region, this Western Indian Ocean would become dry. So it's better when Western Indian Ocean is warmer than Eastern Indian Ocean, right? Because when it is warmer, winds would rise, create a low pressure, it would suck winds from Eastern Indian Ocean, bringing moisture. So when Indian Ocean dipole is positive, there is rainfall in India. Negative, there is very low rainfall in India. And when it is neutral, normal rainfall is there. Now, previously Indian Ocean dipole was in negative territory. That is why there was paucity of rainfall. But now it has become neutral and in future it will go positive. Maybe. Okay. So because of its neutral conditions, well, there was not lack of rainfall in India. Okay, it was not positive either, but there was not lack of rainfall. Similarly is the case with, well, El Nino, La Nina. Okay, this is also, El Nino occurs when warm ocean currents are near South America. La Nina occurs when cold ocean currents are along South America. Now we won't get into the details, but El Nino, when El Nino occurs, there is low rainfall in India. When La Nina occurs, there is high rainfall in India. And this changes periodically, quickly, okay, every 3-5 years. Sometimes it's El Nino, sometimes it's La Nina. When it's La Nina, good news for India. When it's El Nino, bad news for India, right? That is why it is known as El Nino Southern Oscillation, because this cycle oscillates. Sometimes El Nino, sometimes La Nina. Now, there was El Nino-like conditions in India. That was bad, right, for India's monsoon. But now this has reached neutral. So this is good news, and it will become even more good news when La Nina occurs. But it reached neutral conditions, so there was good news for India's rainfall, because it was neutral. El Nino would have been bad. Neutral is okay. La Nina is bumper, like bumper news. Clear? So it was neutral, so fairly conditions were supportive. That's what the article or IMD is trying to say. And then there is Indian monsoon trough or monsoon trough. So monsoon trough is this line on North India, which is the line of extremely low pressure. Why is there low pressure in North India? Because of extreme heat during the summers. Because of this extreme heat, air rises up. Okay, because air rises up, there is low pressure on land in this area. So wind from surrounding areas travel. Now, if monsoon winds have arrived over here, they will also get sucked to this monsoon trough, and that brings monsoon rainfall to North India because of the position of this monsoon trough, because it acts like a magnet. Clear? Now, in the month of June, it was this monsoon trough was lower. It started moving upwards, so it started sucking these monsoon winds to North India, and that is why the entire India got covered quickly by monsoon. Okay, so this is the explanation, though more details would be in your notes. All right, so yeah, that's about it. And now we'll quickly shift our focus to third news item, which is Dalai Lama's succession. Now hear me out carefully, okay? The thing is that, well, Dalai Lama is the spiritual leader of Buddhists in Tibet. Tibetan Buddhism. In Tibetan Buddhism, Dalai Lama is the supreme spiritual leader. And there is a reason for that. Well, Dalai Lama is basically a post. The person who is the Dalai Lama, his name can be something else, but he is appointed as Dalai Lama. And the belief in Tibetan Buddhism is that there was this saint called Avalokiteshvar. Okay, he was a bodhisattva. In Tibetan Buddhism, bodhisattva means that a person who has achieved nirvana, but who stays on this earth to help others achieve nirvana. He's a saint. Bodhisattva is the highest saint. Clear? Now, Avalokiteshvar was the saint in Tibetan Buddhism. His Tibetan name is something else. Well, that is given in your notes. Now, it is believed that because he wants all earthlings to achieve nirvana, therefore, he reincarnates every time. So, he reincarnates as someone, then that person dies, then his soul goes to some other person. Basically, reincarnation happens. He is born again and again. Now, in Tibetan Buddhism, well, he is known as Dalai Lama. So, his reincarnation form is known as Dalai Lama. So, the first Dalai Lama in 13th, 14th century was basically the reincarnated form of this Bodhisattva. Then when he died, he said that I will be reincarnated as this person, find this person and make him Dalai Lama. Then when he dies, he says that I will die on this date and I will be reincarnated as this person and in that village make him Dalai Lama. And this process goes on. Now the current Dalai Lama is the 14th Dalai Lama. Okay. Now in Tibetan Buddhism, among Tibetans, Dalai Lama is not just a spiritual leader. He was also the political leader. Dalai Lamas are not just spiritual, they are also political leaders of all Tibetan Buddhists. Clear? So the 14th Dalai Lama, which is the current Dalai Lama, he was there, he is the spiritual and political leader. Clear? What happened was that in 1951, Tibet was annexed by China. Okay, Tibet was conquered by China and China made Tibet as a part of its own territory. Clear? Then there was a uprising. People were not happy in Tibet. So they led an uprising, they led protests. There was a brutal crackdown of those protests in 1959. So much so that the Dalai Lama and all his spiritual people, okay, the spiritual leaders of Tibetan Buddhists, other Lamas and the Dalai Lama, they had to flee China. They came to India from Arunachal Pradesh, and from there India provided them with a place in Dharamshala, Himachal Pradesh, from where these Tibetan exiles, Dalai Lama, these Tibetan spiritual leaders, including Dalai Lama, they run Tibetan government from exile. So currently Tibet is run by China, but from exile, this government is being run from Dharamshala, Himachal Pradesh by Dalai Lama. Clear? Now the thing is, China is very sensitive about this. So what China is trying to do is, China is trying to choose a person who would be loyal to China and make him the next Dalai Lama, because this 14th Dalai Lama is going to die someday. So the 15th Dalai Lama should be someone who is loyal to China. Then they would be able to control the Tibetan population. So they are trying to search for a person, they are doing all of these things, right? But this 14th Dalai Lama says that, well, basically the next Dalai Lama should come from he would come from, basically 14th Dalai Lama says that he would be my reincarnation, right? So the 14th Dalai Lama says that, well, he used to say this, that the next Dalai Lama would be born outside China. But China wants that next Dalai Lama from China so that they would be able to control it. Okay, so all of this is going on. Now in 2011, this current Dalai Lama announced that on my 90th birthday, I would announce whether Tibetans need another Dalai Lama or not. Whether we should discontinue with this practice of Dalai Lama, I would announce on my 90th birthday. Okay, and if we are going to continue with this practice, then who should be the next Dalai Lama? I would say that, I would announce that on my 90th birthday. Now on July 6, 2025, he's going to be 90 years of age. And people are waiting. What's the announcement he's going to make? This is the issue. Alright, so let's talk about this. Dalai Lama's succession, here he is, okay, and about the institution. So Avalokiteshwar or Chenrezig, the Bodhisattva of compassion, he is getting reincarnated as Dalai Lama. Now this reincarnation of spiritual teacher is basically from a concept in Tibetan Buddhism called Tulku concept, where spiritual leaders reincarnate to help other earthlings. The first Dalai Lama was Gedun Drupa. He was born in 1391 and this practice went on. From 5th Dalai Lama onwards, earlier from 1st Dalai Lama onwards, Dalai Lama was only a spiritual leader. From 5th Dalai Lama onwards, he became a spiritual and political leader as well. Clear? But in 2011, the 14th Dalai Lama, who is the current Dalai Lama, he announced that the political leader should be appointed democratically through elections. So I am giving up my political leadership. I am only a spiritual leader. So this practice, which started from 5th Dalai Lama, was ended with 14th Dalai Lama. Now Dalai Lama is only the spiritual leader. Clear? But the problem is the China issue. China wants its own Dalai Lama. But among Tibetan Buddhists, it is believed that the next Dalai Lama is chosen by the previous Dalai Lama himself, because he says that I would be born as this person in that village. When I die, search him and make him the Dalai Lama. So it all depends on 14th Dalai Lama. But China doesn't consider him Dalai Lama. China says he's a fraud, he's an exile. China basically discards him. Okay, they say he's not a spiritual leader because obviously China wants to control Tibet, so they would discard him, right? So China wants their own Dalai Lama and they're making efforts for that. That is why many Tibetans are basically very nervous what would happen after our 14th Dalai Lama dies. So that's the entire issue. Clear? And the last news item is with respect to Quad Foreign Ministers meeting. Now recently in USA, Washington DC, Quad foreign ministers meeting happened, okay, in which, well, foreign ministers from 4 countries, USA, Australia, Japan and India, they gathered. There, our foreign minister S. Jaishankar said that the world should understand our insecurities with respect to terrorism emanating from Pakistan. So don't call our actions aggressive or irrational. Understand our position, what we are facing, what kind of threats we are facing from Pakistan. That's the thing he said. Basically a warning to all the other countries who were pressurizing India to show some restraint during Operation Sindoor. Clear? Now that is not important for us. What is important for us is, what is this Quad? What is this grouping? Why is it significant? Let's talk about this, okay? So Quad, foreign ministers meeting. Actually, Quad is a short form. It is called Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. This security dialogue is a group of 4 countries in the Indo-Pacific region, Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean region. These 4 countries are India, Japan, USA, Australia. And their purpose, the purpose of this grouping is to basically counterbalance China. Because China is slowly and gradually becoming more and more aggressive in the Indo-Pacific region, especially the South China Sea region. So all these 4 countries, 4 powers, regional powers have gathered to contain China. Contain China is not the right word, not the diplomatic word, but to counterbalance Chinese aggression in this region. Okay. Now this grouping was formed in 2004. It's an informal grouping. And its first meeting happened in 2007. Then in 2008, well, Australia said that, look, if we are members of Quad, that would make China a little angrier. Okay. And we don't want to make China angry. We want to have good relations with China. Therefore, Australia decided to opt out of Quad. So from 2008 to 2012, Australia was not part of this Quad because for the fear of making China angry, and it wanted to maintain good relations with China. But later Australia realized that no, it needs to be a part of this group. This group is important. And that is why it rejoined Quad. And from 2017 onwards till today, this group was renewed, reinvigorated, and more resources were put into this. Okay. Now all these 4 countries take this group seriously. Now some of the key facts about this group. So its main aim is free and open Indo-Pacific. Basically, China is trying to dominate Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean, but we want that Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean should be free for all countries, right? This is our vision. So this is their idea, Quad's idea. Now Quad organizes 2 annual meetings every year. Quad Leader Summit, where Prime Minister, President from each country comes and meets, and Foreign Ministers meeting. Now Quad is significant. Why? Because this group of 4 countries represent 24% of the world's population, 35% of the global GDP and 18% of the global trade. And this group is very important, not just for India, but for all the other countries because it can counterbalance China. Now, significance of this group for India, why this group is important for India? Well, counterbalance China. Plus, it would ensure that there is freedom of navigation in Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean. It is free and open. Plus, international laws like United Nations Convention on Laws of the Sea are implemented. China doesn't implement its own will. International laws like UN clause are implemented in this region. This is our interest. Then these countries are powerful countries, these 4 countries. So they would cooperate for infrastructure development, supply chain development in the region. Plus, these countries have cooperated in the past, playing a key role in health and humanitarian aid. Like Quad, COVID-19 vaccine partnership happened, which led to dispersal of vaccines, COVID-19 vaccines in the region. So for humanitarian aid, health reasons, this is significant for India. And that's about it. So China is not very happy with this grouping because China sees it as an Asian NATO. They see this group as a measure to surround China. So China sees this group as a security threat. Is it a security threat for China? We don't know. Let's see. Okay. And that would be all from today's lecture. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation, but it would add more value if you're consistent and regular with this lecture series and you revise this lecture from the notes. So with that hope that you're revising and you're consistent and you're regular, I'm going to sign off with the promise of seeing you again with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.